Well, my name is Jim Margetts, and my role here at Chadron State is that I am the Dean of Essential Studies and the School of Liberal Arts. And the School of Liberal Arts includes the departments of music, visual and performing arts, which is art and theater, so that makes sense then why you're here. Also English and humanities, and communication arts, social sciences, which includes history, and also criminal justice. So in the role of dean, I tell people who aren't really familiar with what deans do, part of my responsibility is to support approximately 35 faculty members who teach in all of the programs that I just mentioned. And that's really one of my very favorite things that I get to do, because we have a wonderful faculty. And I want you to know that especially in the liberal arts, you have faculty who truly will care about your student and will really talk to them, will mentor and demonstrate for them what it means to be a professional in these different areas that they've chosen. And all of them are really passionate about what they do. They're also very practical and realistic folks. They're also really good at listening to students and to trying to help each individual student find their niche moving forward. I was mentioning, for some of you weren't here at the time, before I became the dean, I was a member of the music faculty for 10 years here. And this is my second year in the role of dean. The first year was as interim dean. I was sort of trying on the boots to see if they fit. And they hired me as the full-time dean last year. So I have really enjoyed the opportunity to do things like this, to talk to people, to answer questions about what it means to major in areas in the liberal arts. For many, with the possible exception of criminal justice, I think a lot of parents probably, when their child says they want to major in English or music or theater or something like that, even though you want to be supportive, there maybe is a little bit of scary, what this doesn't necessarily lead to job X, following this. And, so probably when some of you are saying art education, you're probably, relieved in a way because, there are lots of teacher jobs out there. And so I do know that can be something of a relief. But part of my job today, I think, is to answer your questions and to provide you some information that will help you feel a little bit more at ease about the choice that your student has made to major in one of these areas. Because as we find out all the time, and as we'll go over a little bit in the slide presentation, really the things that that folks are looking for now are really closely related to the kinds of skills that students develop when they study the liberal arts. Things like critical thinking, creativity, thinking outside the box, being able to respond and adapt to certain situations. When you're on stage, when you're in the middle of, when you're adjusting as you're creating a piece of art, when you're performing as a musician, when you're writing something, when you're in these different situations, you're constantly having to think and change and adapt and respond to things that are around you. Think about all the opportunities that your students will have to work in groups and teams. That's another thing that we hear all the time that employers are looking for. They're looking for people who know what it means to play a role and to participate and to accept feedback from other people. Musicians, I can speak from my own experience, are constantly receiving feedback from other people. Is it too loud? Is it too soft? Is it too slow? Is it too fast? And you're constantly having to make adjustments that way. That will position your student to really be successful in whatever they do. I was at a conference last week in Chicago, which was full of all of the colleges and universities that are within the entire Midwest are all accredited by their peer institute. There's a group of people called the Higher Learning Commission. And one of the things that you can feel really good about is that we as an institution are accredited by the Higher Learning Commission. And one of the things that the Higher Learning Commission provides is a way for us to get feedback about our teaching, about our student services, and about some of these other areas that will directly impact your student on a daily basis. And we really have the opportunity to go and learn about what's happening at other campuses in other types of institutions, 2-year schools, 4-year private schools, large Research One institutions. And I just want you to know that you can feel really good about what's happening here at Chadron State. Time and again, we were complimented for the things that we're trying to do and the things that we're already successfully doing to help students succeed and to find their niche and to be able to move on and get excited about life. So there'll be a time a little bit later to answer some of your questions. One of the things that I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk to you about our Essential Studies program. So many of you may not be familiar with those two words, put together. If any of you, some of you have had older children that have attended college, others of you may have had some college experience yourselves. What we used to call general studies is now at Chadron State called Essential Studies. And about 6 years ago, there was a commission, there was a group of faculty members that got together and decided that they wanted to do something a little bit more meaningful with the traditional general studies program. The general studies is where you're taking courses that are typically outside your major, and they're sort of like the courses that are good for you, that you don't necessarily know why you have to take them, but somebody will tell you they're good for you. So here's sort of what Essential Studies is. What should a student know regardless of their major career goals or be able to accomplish? So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about here as we talk about Essential Studies are things that we've added to or tried to sort of blend into our traditional general studies program. So how you have to take an English class and a math class, and what used to look like a lot like the high school model. I'm sure your students have had to meet certain requirements for graduation, and I'm sure, I don't know if any of you had to sort of sit on pins and needles or if things were comfortable all the way through, but I think as a parent, I have my oldest son is a junior in high school this year, and so a year from now I'm going to be sitting in your shoes, and it kind of makes me a little nervous because he's my first, and so I can empathize with you, I guess is what I'm saying, and when I'm looking at your faces and seeing you're trying to gauge your reaction on some different things, know that I'm also sort of projecting myself being in the same seat that you're in right now in a year and wondering how I'm going to be feeling, and if I've done what I feel is enough to prepare my son to be able to go out and be successful away from home in a different environment and all of these things. So please feel free to ask questions. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about what your schedule is going to look like. Your student right now is meeting with an academic advisor in your area. So we've selected and gotten volunteers from across campus. So there's a faculty member from the music department who's here, who's meeting specifically with the music and music education majors. There's a faculty member from criminal justice who will be meeting with your student about their schedule. So talking about that. So when you get back together, your student will have, if they haven't already received one, a schedule, and it's going to be updated a little bit, and some of the classes that you're going to see on the schedule will fit in what we call our Essential Studies student learning outcomes. So when the faculty redesigned the outcomes, they decided that they wanted to focus on these 5 areas and include at least one course in each of the 5 areas that would mean something. So first of all, first year inquiry, FYI. Now you'll see, maybe you've heard something about FYI courses. If you have, we'll talk about that a little bit before as we go forward. The idea of inquiry-guided education is something that might make your student at first feel a little bit outside their comfort zone. Inquiry-guided education, the idea behind it is that we want to help students rekindle their natural curiosity. My youngest son, I have 4 children, my youngest son is in 2nd grade right now. And you can, if you have 2nd graders at home, or if you can remember what it was like when your child was younger, you probably remember that they were constantly asking questions about everything. And at some point you just think, oh my goodness, could there be any more questions? It's a time when they're naturally intellectually curious. Now, for a variety of reasons, puberty, standardized testing, maybe there's a lot of different reasons why. Sometimes that natural intellectual curiosity sort of goes dormant for a little while, and I don't know if you've experienced that too, where you just think, do they care about anything? This is my son right now, I can't quite tell. Does he really care? Does he not care? So the idea behind first year inquiry then is to help our students rekindle that natural curiosity by helping them, guiding them into knowing what questions to ask, helping them to be able to really think about an issue and think about what do I want to know about that? And then the follow-up to that then is where can I go to find the information? And we know the first place that anybody naturally goes, and probably even we ourselves, what do? Right? I pull out my phone, My son last night, this is classic, and I felt so stupid as a parent, I thought, wow, it's been too long since I had a history class. Dad, what's socialism? As we're sitting, we're having this conversation, who won the NBA game last night, who got drafted, who did the Broncos drafted so-and-so and whatever. And so we're having this conversation, and all of a sudden, Dad, what's socialism? So, I told him, we talked about it a little bit, and I said, these are the kinds of questions that you're going to naturally. I said, this is a great thing. What can we do to find out more about this? Because this is, and of course, he needed to know it for a test today, right? So, there's not really, how do you talk about socialism in, a 30-second sound blip? He was ready to move on to the next study guide question or whatever. So, in inquiry guided learning, we really want to be able to give students a chance to ask questions. There's also room in an FYI class to ask questions and find answers that are completely surprising, and they may even set up a hypothesis and go start asking questions and find out that their hypothesis is wrong, right? And I don't know about you, my student, I have a daughter who's a freshman in high school. Every time, if she perceives that she is failing at all in anything, freaks out, and then she's my only girl too. So it's been a long time since I had a teenage girl around in my life, and I love her to pieces. But she does have a tendency to sort of, become emotional at, if she gets a 98 on a quiz or something. She's one of those kids. And so and my wife and I swear we don't put any pressure on the kids, but she puts pressure on herself and just, whoa, it's like, yikes. So what do we do when we fail? One of the things I think that's really important about the college experience, and we try and embed this in our essential studies philosophy, is it's okay to fail and find out what doesn't work. And we want to be able to give students the room to breathe and to find that out. So if your student calls you up and says, my FYI class is going so terribly because I can't get anything right and I ask all the wrong questions and all of this stuff, really, I hope that you'll be able to just help them take a deep breath and say, it's okay. It's okay. This is part of life. This is part of what learning is about. Learning is not only about, in fact, I will tell you that as I went on further and further in college and I earned a doctorate in piano performance, the very last activities that I had to do in order to receive my diploma were the most humiliating experiences of my life, because it reminded me of all the things, and I say, it was also joyous, so, whatever, but it was humiliating in the sense that I realized how much I don't know. And I think coming to terms with that, but learning how to learn is what FYI is all about. Learning how to care and to become a lifelong learner. And the reason that we put it first is because we hope that the students will take those processes and everything else about that learning experience and be able to apply it in all of their classes. Not just their major classes, not just their other essential studies classes, but in all of their classes, and hopefully even that they'll start applying those things to life too. So we recognize that a lot of the learning that takes place during these next 4 or 5 years, depending on how things go, are important experiences that are going to carry them through, and most of them take place outside of the classroom. And so as part of the Essential Studies program, in all of these courses, we embed inquiry-based learning. We also have really made an effort to do things outside of the classroom. We call those high impact experiences, where a lot of our FYI classes are conducted out on the road. One of the FYI classes that is very popular, and I can imagine you can understand why, is called Mathletics. So what it does is it combines using math and athletics, taking two sort of various, very seemingly diverse and opposing subjects, blending them together and seeing how they apply. So in Mathletics, they take a field trip. They get to go down, typically they go down in the fall, and they go see a Colorado Rockies baseball game. As part of that experience, though, they're using math, they're applying, they study the angles and the trajectory and the statistics of what makes the sport interesting. And they have to go out and they measure how far the ball traveled and what the velocity was. And so they're using mathematic principles as a way of understanding something about life as well, and about the athletic process and measuring and talking about how important that sort of thing is. And for those of you who follow sports, they use advanced metrics all the time now to evaluate athletic talent, and they're constantly, it's amazing the amount of statistics that goes into that. So taking things that would appear to be opposite, blending them together and looking at things from two varying viewpoints. That's what FYI is about as well. So getting different perspectives. I have two faculty members. One is the chair of our agriculture department, our agriculture program. Rangeland management is a big program here at Chadron State. As you can imagine, within our region, obviously that's a big industry and that's something that we want to support. At the same time, one of our English faculty members, they've put together a class between the two of them that's called Home on the Range, where they write about these different experiences. And as a dean, I have the opportunity to review within the course. Every course is evaluated by the students, the instructor, the subject matter, and we get feedback. And it's my opportunity every year and every semester to review that feedback. And what I hear from the students is things like, it's amazing to me to hear two different perspectives about the same issue. Whether we're talking about conservation of the range, or we're talking about cattle and ranching, we're talking about different things, and we're looking at it from the English professor's, writer's point of view versus from the person who's out there on the boots on the ground. It's very exciting. Now, I'm going to tell you that you'll also see some titles of some courses in FYI that might make you think, really? For example, last year we were proud to be featured in a Huffington Post article online where we were cited as being ridiculous because we had a course, one of our FYI courses, called Wizards and Vampires. And they thought, how ludicrous is that? They should be studying Shakespeare. They should not be, focusing on this. So another reason that we have FYI courses and that they're titled the way that they are is so that we can help students understand how to think more deeply about things that they're already interested in, or that we can use that as a gateway to be able to explore some of these deeper issues. The class, I will tell you this, and this is something that we weren't interviewed at all about this, but the reason that this course is important is not because of the content. Your FYI course is not, you're not going to be learning everything about every wizard and every vampire that ever lived. Or now the course has been retitled, it's now called Monsters and Magic, as if that makes it any easier to explain, right? So, but there is a course called Monsters and Magic. It's going to be offered in the spring if any of your students are interested in that sort of thing. It is on the spring schedule, and right now they will only be enrolled in fall courses because about halfway through the fall semester, they will be introduced to their official academic advisor in their major. And so right now, the START office is working with them to build their schedules with the help of these faculty members that they're meeting with right now. In October, they'll have the opportunity to transition, they'll meet with their new faculty advisor, and they'll plan their spring semester schedule based on what they've done so far in their fall semester. And by then, who knows, they might have decided they want to become a marine biologist, or you know how that goes. Things change. So then they'll have the opportunity to work on that. But this FYI class, Monsters and Magic, isn't really about learning about Frankenstein and Dracula, and it's not memorizing a bunch of facts about all of those things. It's using those topics to ask questions and to learn how to identify a first-rate quality source. Most of the time that is not Wikipedia. So, how to use the library, how to go in, what kind of things we have to offer. All of those are built into the process. And again, as I mentioned, allowing students time to pursue something and then find out that that was the wrong, hopefully before they get too far, the teacher can help them say, maybe you want to back up a little bit and ask a different question and ask it in the right way. So that's a lot of talk about FYI, and we can answer more questions. Like I said, there's one called Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire, and that's taught by one of our criminal justice faculty members, our department chair. His idea is about how to recognize when people are being truthful or when they're, how to read body language, how to, he's also the instructor of a class that we have called Verbal Judo. And so being able to, one of the things I will just tell you, and then we'll move on here, one of the things about FYI and about the capstone courses that we talk about at the end that has been really great from a dean's perspective is it has really engaged our faculty and has gotten them to really think about what they do in new and exciting ways that makes the classroom experience very dynamic. The one thing that I want you to know is sometimes students are really unprepared for being asked to do more in the classroom setting. They're used to sitting and receiving information sometimes. And so your student may be uncomfortable, and you may even hear things like, oh, my teacher doesn't do anything in class. All they do is they just expect me to look up the information and to read a textbook. And believe me, I hear this as the dean all the time. Oh, Dr. So-and-so, whatever. And so I just want you to know, please be prepared to, at least on the initial front, back that up and have faith that there is a reason behind this, asking the student to sort of step into the driver's seat in the classroom and maybe being uncomfortable. Now, there's always a point at which, feel free, you can always contact the dean too if you feel like the teacher hasn't been in class for 3 weeks. I mean, obviously that's not part of it, because the teacher's role is changing from one of delivering content to one of facilitating learning and being able to plan activities that will help the students to do the learning and recognize that hopefully by the time they graduate, they don't need a facilitator anymore. They can facilitate their own learning. Some of your students might already, we have a spectrum, I'm sure, and some of your students might already be partway along this path. And the teachers are trained to be able to accommodate that and to be able to work with students at where they are and to help them, progress further along the line towards being self-sustaining learners and lifelong learners. All right, quickly, skills encompasses classes like writing, speaking, being able to do mathematics, and it also includes creative arts, which was a new component that we added when we revised and created the Essential Studies program in 2012. So in addition to doing those traditional sorts of skill building things, your child, your student, will also be given the opportunity to do some sort of skill. Now, some of you, your student is already in an area like drama, and those classes are also in there. So they may be able to do what we call double dipping, where they can count what they're already doing. If they're in choir, for example, choir is a class that also fulfills a skills requirement. I will say, though, that if your student has participated in music or theater or art and is not majoring in it, that they can also receive credit for continuing to participate in those areas. And I will tell you my own, and I realize I'm a little biased, but it's been my observation that students who participate in those areas, in addition, we have a great writing club, a creative writing group, and some others, but students who get involved in those groups tend to have more successful acclimation to their college experience, and it's easier for them to find a peer group where they feel connected and where they fit in. It introduces them to a much larger range of students than they would otherwise meet when in their own major. Yes?
So if and wants to be in choir, is there can he just sign up, or does he have to like audition?
He can sign up, and then the audition happens the first couple of days of the semester, where he'll be, placed in the right section or whatever, and given those options. But yeah, if he signs up for it, that's all he needs to do.
Good.
And that's.
I'm going to do a little bragging because he was All-State and ACDA All-Northwest as well.
Oh wow, that's exciting. Yeah. Well, great. Well, and if you have more, specific questions, we can talk for a minute afterwards. But yeah, I would encourage that among all of your students. If they have participated in other areas, they can definitely get involved and possibly use that to fulfill their essential studies requirement at the same time. If they've always wanted to learn to play the guitar, there's a guitar class. If they've always wanted to do graphic design and they want to learn how to use the computer, there's an intro to graphic design class that's part of the essential studies. So it's a way for them to explore creativity and to be able to work on that. All right, modes of inquiry is, looking at things from a historical perspective, so that's where your history class is. From a humanistic perspective, that's where you learn about the world. And from a civic engagement, a social responsibility perspective. I'm going to brag about that a little bit. I don't know if they've talked to you at all about the big event, which was a day of service that we just held last Saturday. 500 students on our campus went out into the community of Chadron and worked at over 50 job sites where they cleaned branches and raked leaves and helped plant trees. They helped people understand the environment. It happened to be Earth Day, and so they worked with our Earth Day, our local folks. One of the things that we really believe is important is helping students interact with other folks outside of the campus. And so the civic engagement part of the modes of inquiry is a way for us to help students engage outside of our campus and outside of our traditional area. Personal and social responsibility is also part of that too. And so we talk about ways to become more involved in diversity and that sort of thing. And then the capstone is a class at the end which asks them to bring in everything that they've learned through all of their other essential studies coursework. This is something that they would take as a senior, where they'll be asked to pull in elements of all of the things that they've gained and demonstrate, usually through a final project, that they know that they can write, that they can speak, that they can do all of these things. They're able to think logically, that they can consider other perspectives as far as they relate to interacting with their fellow human beings, and to be able to demonstrate that they can do all of that is a really exciting thing, and you'll hear more about that. So, all right, Sarah, let's go on to the next slide. There's more slides. So we've talked about these just a little bit, but there are professional benefits, and especially for you folks that are here supporting students studying in the liberal arts. This is where it's really important for you to know. Students with a broad foundational education are more marketable in the workforce. What I heard at the conference that I attended last week is that people who are looking to prepare students for a job immediately upon graduation are really missing the mark, because in our world today, it's likely that adults will likely have 4, 5, 6 different jobs or careers over the course of their work life. And if you're only focused on preparing somebody for one job with a particular set of skills, it's pretty narrowly focused. I will tell you that I believe the liberal arts prepares students to be more well-rounded and able to participate in a variety of different work environments than any of the other disciplines on campus. And so I think you should be very proud that your student has chosen, at least initially, to explore their interest in a liberal arts education, because I think it will pay off for them in the long run. So here are some of the professional benefits of essential studies. It does complement student development, as we've talked about. We're cultivating these skills of being able to work in groups and teams, to be able to have the ability to go out and work with people in the community, to talk about different things like that. It does have lifelong impact. Being able to be creative. When rough times come, what are some solutions that I can come up with? We all know, having lived a little bit longer than our students have at this point in our lives, that their tough times come. Unexpected things change, our lives change. How we adapt to those things and having the sort of resilient skills that we need to have is really it's an intentional part, I want you to know, of what we're trying to provide each and every student who comes to Chadron State. And we do that by asking our faculty to really help them develop these skills in critical thinking, being able to really think, if Donald Trump says, and I don't mean to be political, but if Donald Trump says, a 5-word sentence on a soundbite, is that really accurate? Where do I go to find out if what he's saying is true? And I could say the same of Hillary Clinton or of, any candidate, But being able to think critically and not taking something at face value just because somebody who's on TV says it is an important skill. I think you would all agree that it's an important thing to be able to think for oneself and to listen and to consider various viewpoints and then come together. It's a little bit scary, because sometimes I think, and this is what I'm scared of, that my children might decide that they have different opinions about things than I do, or that if I feel a certain way and I've taught them to, this is what life's about, they might be at least introduced. And I will tell you this, we work really hard to not push a certain agenda, but to just open the possibilities for our students so that they at least consider the viewpoint of how a Muslim might hear what Donald Trump said about, banning them from our country, or, whether or not it's the right thing to do, and somebody will have to decide that. But at least to understand that somebody hearing it from a different perspective might feel very differently about it. Those are the kinds of things that we're trying to introduce without being dogmatic, or, we're not trying to train our students to be, I know somebody says liberal arts. Oh my goodness, you people, you're so liberal, you're so, you just do anything, No, that's not what it's about, really. So, thank you. Eagles succeed by building relationships with faculty. We'll cover a couple brief things here. Please encourage your students to go and meet their faculty members. One of the very first things that I will tell all students whenever I meet with them is your faculty members have office hours. This is a very new concept for most of them. You actually have to go to their office if you want to talk to them, right? I mean, you can send them an email and that's fine, but I promise you, if they will go and just knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so from Lodgepole, and I'm, whatever," and just say and introduce themselves and just take 2 minutes to do that, it'll set the tone for a semester of communication. That communication can happen by email, it can happen by telephone, it can happen by a lot of different means. But if you can help them, and I know how hard it is. I mean, my son's trying to finish his Eagle Scout, my 17-year-old, and getting him to go talk to somebody who might sponsor his project, it's about all he can do. And I remember feeling the same way. Our faculty will do everything they can to be welcoming and inviting, to bring them into that relationship. But please help them. If they call you and they say, "I hate my class," will you please encourage them to go talk to the faculty member or talk to somebody? Talk to the dean. We have an office in my dean's office. We also house the student concerns desk, which is staffed by a student, actually a graduate student, who listens and helps students know what to do if they have a concern. If they think they have too much homework, or if they feel like their grade was not what it should be. It's easier to call you, but you're going to feel rather helpless probably and not knowing what to do. And believe me, it'll play much better with the faculty member if the student will go and meet with them first before getting the parent involved. And that's kind of a different thing. I know you'll talk about some of the things, you can't just pick up the phone to college like you did in high school and talk to the principal, because we have what's known as FERPA restrictions, where we can't just automatically give out everything about your child's academic plan. So this is how your student will be assigned an advisor. First of all, since all of your students have declared their major, at least initially, they will be assigned a faculty member who is trained to advise students in their area of interest. For those of you who are doing art and education, or music and education, or history and education, typically there's also an education faculty member who serves as a secondary advisor for the student, even if it's unofficial, so that we make sure that they get all of their history elements and all of their education requirements met at the same time. So keep that in mind. So have the students contact their advisor or instructor. That information is right on the very front page of what they'll see when they open up My CSC. So if they have any question about it, they can go talk to, they can go talk to any faculty member at any time. Thank you, Sarah. So we'll keep plowing through this. Here are all of the different resources. Encourage your students, I'll just put a plug in for tutoring. It's peer tutoring, for one thing, and it's available to all students. It's not meant to be a remediation, it's meant to be a support. And a lot of our very best students who really want to focus on learning as much as they can will take full advantage. It's all free, it's all done by peers, it's supported by faculty members, and it's housed in our library. So that's important. START, as we've talked about, these are the folks who are able to, and I'm sure you've had interaction with them already, but they're wonderful at being able to provide a variety of resources. And then we also do have a career development office, as well as the conversations that happen with the faculty. If your student all of a sudden decides maybe they don't want to major in music or education or whatever else it is, this is a great resource for them to go to. It's also located in the library building. They can make an appointment or they can just walk in and they can start. And we have resources for them to be able to explore other alternative. And I will tell you that I have heard this said multiple times in the last week. Our job is, we want everybody we hope everybody will graduate from Chadron State. But our ultimate goal is that we'll help your student find their calling and their academic purpose. And if that means, we do have some programs that matriculate students out to UNMC and to other places, and they don't ever graduate from Chadron State in the health professions. But we want your student to be able to find where they fit. If they all of a sudden decide they want to become an engineer, we don't offer engineering on our campus, but we can help somebody find that. Most often, I tell this story a lot. One year I was teaching, we had 27 incoming music majors. Of those students, one graduated with a music degree from Chadron State College, 1 out of 27. But I'm proud to say that 19 of the other students also graduated from Chadron State, but in other disciplines: theater, art, communications, journalism, science, so our job is really to help students find themselves as they're exploring and doing all of this. So I think, is this close to the last slide? Yay, okay, good. And oh my goodness, all right, well, there we go. Just quick questions if there's anything I can answer. I don't know, I tend to talk a lot and not leave much breathing room. Yes?
I do have another one. I am a social studies teacher, so I know how competitive the history education market is. Is it possible to double major in other education
Yes,
areas?
it is.
Okay.
Yeah. And that would be picking up like an extra endorsement in something. And yes, that's very possible. And I, for that, to answer that question, I think I would ask you might start with the history faculty, but then you could also, there's a certification office in the education department. She's really helpful at being able to guide that sort of double major interest if you want to pick up another endorsement. And there, it is possible to do that. And it's good to find complementary areas where you can, offer a multitude of yeah, I understand, because it's certainly competitive. So.
Well, he's also interested in English, so that would be not necessarily a different endorsement, would it be?
It might be. Yeah, you'd have to take a look and see what the requirements are, but a lot of them would overlap, at least in the education part.
Okay.
So it might add a little bit of time, but ultimately it would be worth it if it makes them more marketable. So good. Any other questions? You've been a wonderful audience, and I appreciate the chance to visit with you. If at any time you have questions, since I am the boss of all of your faculty, of your students' faculty and their major, please know that my office door is open, and I am more than happy to talk with you, or especially with your student. If they have questions, if they just want to come by and introduce themselves, my office is in the old administration building. It's called Old Admin. And there's a globe, a big globe in the hallway right outside my office, because among the many things I'm also in charge of, and I'll just put in a plug for this, is study abroad. And one of the things that we are hoping to encourage our students to do, and we have faculty-led study abroad programs that fulfill if we go back to, we don't have to go back to the slide, but if you can picture that essential studies slide, all of those areas, next year our choir program is going to Ireland on a study abroad. Next year, we have our history and English faculty are leading a group into Cuba, which fulfills several responsibilities. And they were actually there. We joke about this, but they were actually there when President Obama announced that relations had softened, and I like to think that they were responsible for it. So I'm sure they had a great deal to do with it. But we had 10 students who went over there, and we have a group of 12 and growing students who are going to be going between fall and spring semesters. Typically, we encourage our older students to do that, but you don't have to wait. And we also, my office also facilitates semester abroad. So if we have partnerships with universities all around the world that we use, and we traditionally have had a London criminal justice program that many of our justice, that's a 30-year program where they go over and they see the criminal justice system in the United Kingdom, and we're looking at expanding that into other countries in the coming years so that our students have an opportunity to go and experience what it's like to maybe just see how a different country works and how they do things. And more of those opportunities are expanding all the time. So please, it is a little bit of an extra expense. I always like to talk to the freshman parents, the incoming freshman parents, to think about what it's worth, and if, we also encourage you to have, plan ahead, and, maybe if grandma wants to, give them a present every year for Christmas of, $50 towards a trip or $100 or whatever like that, that you can, plan now so that when they're a senior and they want to take this capstone class where they're going to go to, someplace and really have an amazing experience and learn a lot of these things that we're talking about. Tell them they can come see me. And I just sent a freshman, she's on her way to Scotland this summer to do a month-long study away that's not facilitated by our faculty, but is sponsored by a university over there. And so there are all sorts of opportunities. I sent a student to Ireland for a year. She's now getting a graduate degree. She's graduating next week from a university in Pennsylvania with a master's degree in music therapy, and she is going to be a wonderful, wonderful advocate for not Chadron State, but also music and in the world, and so we're real proud of her. So, yes?
So when they do go study abroad, if they do this semester, does that extend their...
Sometimes. Okay. Sometimes they can take courses that actually will transfer in, and that's one of the things that we do, is if they plan it well, they can usually take 2 or 3 classes that will count towards different aspects of essential studies, and then they don't necessarily have to. And they also are available for they're eligible for financial aid for study abroad. So, yeah, and so like the students that are going to Ireland next year in the choir, they'll enroll in a set of courses that will make them eligible for financial aid support. If they qualify for Pell, if the Pell will pay for that, then that's fine. Sometimes it's in the form of a parent loan, but financial aid is made available to students to be able to do study abroad. So.
And I am going to have to cut that
I know.
right there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.